Ahoy there! Captain Benzie here, coming at you with another deck building video for Magic Manastrike. This time around I wanted to talk about one of my personal favourite planeswalkers, Garruk Wildspeaker. Before we jump in, if you are enjoying my content, please let me know by hitting like on the video and subscribing to this channel if you haven't already. There's plenty more Magic Manastrike videos on the way. Do let me know what content you would like to see, either in the comment section down below, or by coming and finding me on one of the various social media channels you should see across the bottom of your screen now. Right, all that said and done, let's talk about Garruk. Now, Garruk was a planeswalker introduced in the Innistrad slot of Magic the Gathering. Innistrad is very ghosts and goblins, vampires and werewolves, very spooky, like sort of Halloween town style setting, which I adore wholeheartedly. Sorin Markov is my favourite planeswalker, Garruk Wildspeaker is a close second, and of course it's Garruk we're going to talk about today. Now, originally he was a green planeswalker, very much an alpha hunter, might is right kind of guy. He does get sort of cursed by Liliana Vess, there's more to it than that. Look it up online, I'm not going to go into full details here, which ends up sort of tainting him with death, hence he ends up becoming a black and green planeswalker. Now, let's have a look at Garruk's abilities. Now, Garruk himself, and again, these are level 4 stats. I'm currently rank 4 in the game, so these may vary depending on what you've got. Garruk is one of the ones that you purchase for 30,000 gold in the shop, and is well worth it in my opinion. Looking at his stats, he's got a very solid health pool. His hit points here, 2,760, that is remarkably tanky. Yeah, sure, he's not Howling Golem level of tankiness, but he does take a fair beating, much more so than, say, Chandra, or some of the other softer, squishier planeswalkers. This guy will walk across the battlefield and actually get to where he's going before dying. An attack of 342, fairly solid damage with his axes. It's a melee attack that only hits ground targets though, which is a very important point with Garruk. He only hits ground targets. In his summon unit ability, when he appears on the battlefield, he summons 2 beasts that run and attack at enemy buildings. Again, they ignore ground targets, and his skill, Wild Strike, is a cleave ability that again only hits ground creatures. Let's have a look. So you see here, when he appears on the battlefield, he summons 2 boars. Those boars both run across the battlefield and only hit enemy buildings. When they're killed, they do both resummon though, which is really important for this deck strategy. They don't hit flyers, as you can see, and Garruk himself cannot hit flyers either, so even something here like a Clockwork Beetle can cause some serious difficulties for him. Finally, here's that Planeswalker skill. As you can see, his Wild Strike. It is a big cleave that does big damage to the guys who he's in combat with, and will hit multiple opponents, but it cannot hit flying opponents. That is a big point with Garruk. One of Garruk's biggest weaknesses, straight up and down, he cannot target air. Which means, of course, when we're building a deck around him, air is what we're going to look at. Now, on top of the fact that he has a weakness to air, the second ability that I'm really honing in on here is ultimately his ability to summon those extra beasts. And remember, when those 2 beasts are killed, extra ones are summoned, and that's a theme you'll see running through this deck. So going from right to left, we do of course have the Hedron Scouts. Great little starting unit, 3 little bugs for 1 mana, very happy with that. Giant Growth, which is used for healing things as a spell. Then we come up to the Accursed Spirit, which is one of my favourite units in the game. I'm trying to level this guy up desperately, but being a rare card, yeah, good luck with that. Followed by the Clockwork Beetles, the Hive, I think it's called, yeah, Hornet Nest, sorry. The Reiver Demon, and then Drudge Skeletons. Now, if you can't tell already, the Reiver Demon, the Drudge Skeletons, this is very much a feeder deck. The aim of this deck is to feed as many units as we can to the Reiver Demon. So, of course, let's talk about the Reiver Demon first. So the Reiver Demon, as you can see here, it's a decent amount of HP, very good attack for what it does, hits air and ground with a melee air attack, and it's an air mover itself. Now, what it does is, when you summon it into the battlefield, everything that is near it when it appears, it sacrifices, it kills them, and makes itself more powerful. If we have a look at this on here, you'll see, as it comes into play, it sacrifices anything in that circle, and it comes into play then more beefed up. So a times 0 Reiver Demon isn't overly crazy, but here you can see there's, 7 warriors there, sacrifice all of those, and then boom, up comes the Reiver Demon times 7, and this guy is significantly more powerful. He hits harder, he has more health, he just survives longer, and the damage he can do is just insane. Now, ultimately, this is the main purpose of this deck, to get a big, hefty Reiver Demon as as reliably as possible. As such, almost everything in this deck has some kind of purpose to summoning lots of little creatures. Garruk himself, of course, when you drop him into the arena and he summons those 2 beasts, that's immediately 2 beasts on the battlefield for free. You've got the Drudge Skeletons. If you hold down on Drudge Skeletons, you set that X value to whatever you want it to be. You can drop it in at 2 mana and it will create 2 Drudge Skeletons. If you ramp it all the way up to 8 mana and drop it, it'll create 8 Drudge Skeletons. Very, very useful in a pinch if you've got something big and hefty coming your way and you need to swarm it down, but also great for feeding that Reiver Demon. The Hornet Nest, and with the Clockwork Beetles, both of these are here to summon flying units. Now, the Hornet Nest is a building, so you drop it on your side of the battlefield, and it just keeps summoning little Hornet Swarms. Obviously, the Clockwork Beetles, you drop that for 3 mana, and it summons 3 Clockwork Beetles that fly and deal damage to flying and ground units. Both of them are just really useful anyway. They're great little irritations. They get right up into your opponent's face and just annoy the living heck out of them. But if you've got Hornet's Nest down, you're getting a constant supply of free Hornet Swarms. Of course, with the Clockwork Beetles, you're dropping 3 of those down for 3 mana as well. All things that can feed the Reiver Demon. If you've got a nest already down, for example, at the back of your arena, you drop Garruk down, and you drop the Clockwork Beetles down, for 3 mana, you've now got possibly 1 Hornet Swarm, 3 Clockwork Beetles, and Garruk's 2 beasts. So for those 3 mana, you've now got 6 units stacked up nicely. Drop the Reiver Demon in, and for a total of 8 mana, you now have a ×6 Reiver Demon about to wreak havoc across the battlefield. Even more so if you happen to have Drudge Skeletons around, or that little bit of extra mana with the Hedron Scouts. 1 mana for 3 creatures. It's rare that you're going to be using those for anything other than feeding a Reiver Demon. Again, for 6 mana, if you drop down Garruk himself with the Hedron Scouts and then immediately put a Reiver Demon over those, you've got the 3 Hedron Scouts, the 2 beasts from Garruk, and a Reiver Demon. 6 mana for a ×5 Reiver Demon. That is just insanely good value. Now, Reiver Demons do hit air and they do hit ground, which means they're fairly tanky at getting across the battlefield, but just in case you need something quick to hit something at a distance, that's where our Accursed Spirit comes in. Ranged attacks with air and ground. As you can see, this guy is just great at sort of shooting down targets, whether they're ranged or on ground targets. Great fun there. And when they die, they decrease the movement speed and attack speed of a random enemy within range, which is also just a great little effect. It's nothing special, it's nothing this deck focuses on, but it's just nice to have. If you are struggling with the Accursed Spirit, alternatives could be things like the Giant Spider. I have seen the Giant Spider used instead of like the Beetles and that, but quite frankly, I think it works better replacing the Accursed Spirit, simply because obviously it's easier to get the spiders being common, and you want those Clockwork Beetles and that for the fact that you can then summon them to the sacrifice them to the Reiver Demon. Ultimately, what I'm getting at here is the main purpose of this deck is just to feed the Reiver Demon. Garruk himself makes a great little planeswalker to walk across the battlefield. You can actually have him walk across the battlefield with a bit of support. Then suddenly the beasts that he was summoning get destroyed. He summons 2 new beasts. You drop down a load of Drudge Skeletons, and you drop down a Reiver Demon right in your enemy's lines. And that's ultimately the point of this. You've got all the tools you need to deal with things incoming, to defend quite nicely, but you are mainly an aggressive deck. You want to be pushing forward at all times, sacrificing creatures to your Reiver Demons, and don't be afraid. If you've got a swarm of zombies and a Reiver Demon that's about to die, summon another Reiver Demon and sacrifice the old one to it. A nearly dead Reiver Demon is just going to die. May as well sacrifice it and get that extra +1 to the one you're about to summon. It's great fun. I love this deck so much. I've been having so much fun with it, and I imagine it's utterly brutal to face against. I don't often lose against with this deck. It is a solid option. The only spell I haven't mentioned so far and talked about is Giant Growth. Now, Giant Growth is a bit of you might like it. I'm in 2 minds about this spell. I am considering taking it out, but I just find it so useful at the moment. Ultimately, it just increases the HP of whichever the biggest unit in its effect range is. Now, the biggest unit in its effect range should usually be your Reiver Demon. So kind of think of it as a free heal to the Reiver. That said, again, I have seen people swap that out for the Spider. That does work quite nicely. Doomblade can also be swapped in there. It's a little bit more expensive, but it deals massive damage to something that's getting in the way, if they've got something blocking your Reiver Demon. Or, of course, even the humble Ratchet Bomb. This thing does insane damage, considering its cost. Okay, it's one more cost than the giant growth, but even if we put that in there, you'll see average mana only goes up to 2.4, so you've still got a very, very cheap and quick deck to run. It's all about that aggression, all about sacrificing things to the Reiver Demon, and knowing when to do so. Anyway, enough talk about the deck, let's actually see this one in action. What I really like about this particular replay is it showcases how brutally effective the Garruk Wildspeaker deck can be when played this way. Ultimately, I try to play this one a little bit like a black Planeswalker, in that I'm kind of accepting that I need to make a sacrifice in order to achieve something greater. Now you see straight off the bat here, I do my usual conservative opening, take one of my cheapest units right in the back line just to see what my opponent's coming out with. I can see straight away he's gone for a walking ballista. It's fairly expensive, and as soon as I see that golem come down, down comes Garruk along with the Clockwork Beetles and a Reiver Demon. That's 8 mana for a ×5 creature. I was actually hoping to get that a little bit more, but obviously that's all I can do with the cards I've got, and that's just going to go along the bottom line. Abyssal Spectre, or I forget what they're called now, those the Spectres there, the 2 mana one, that's just doing a bit of damage and trying to hold them back at the top, just slow them down enough, just pop out like a, you can see there the Hornet Nest comes down, just to slow these guys down and keep them off my final Guardian. Garruk, on the other hand, with his Reiver Demon there, has just absolutely ripped apart that bottom Guardian, and I'm summoning a load of extra stuff in there. Those beasts that he's summoning are just doing that extra bit of damage. He's now right up against the final totem. I can see I'm doing more damage than Jace is, so I can just leave him to it and pump everything I have into taking down that totem. The idea here is understanding that Garruk and the rest of my deck is sheer brute force. When it comes to a race on they're on my Guardian, I'm on their Guardian, I know I'm going to win, so I can just happily let them get on with it, knowing I'm going to pull them down and let Jace throw everything he has at it. Not always recommended, but what I did there is ultimately I threw a decent weight into the bottom line, and then just threw little tidbits to slow down his top line, knowing fully well that a powered up Reiver Demon and Garruk summoning his beasts repeatedly are just going to walk their way through there if he doesn't do something about it. Unfortunately, he gambles on the I'm hoping I can get this down before Garruk does, and he loses. Alright, that one was a little bit short, wasn't it? So let's have a look at a second one using the same deck against a different opponent this time, a red-white Planeswalker. So let's see what they pull out and what I do this time. Again, this is all about domination, about using primal brute force. Straight away, I'm looking at charging up my Drudge Skeletons, just get those nice and ready and going. Considering what my options are going to be first off, when I see that Golem come down, that's a fair whack of mana, I think, you know what? Let's start sending out something as simple and as effective, just as the Hornet's Nest, and blows bits down. Down go the 5 Drudge Skeletons, or 6 I think it actually ends up being, with the Hornets there. I see a bit of damage, I quickly sacrifice all of those units to the Reiver Demon. That is a ×7 Reiver Demon now on the battlefield, and you can see the work it is doing, just punching through everything. Garruk unfortunately does die to the dragon, but the Shivan Dragon not before the Reiver Demon punches it in the face. And the Reiver Demon again takes out this Planeswalker. I cannot remember the Planeswalker's name for the life of me, but she just dies very quickly to that Planeswalker, to that Reiver Demon. Unfortunately, the Reiver Demon does go down, but I've got a little bit of the Hornets and the Clockwork Beetles there, just to get a little teeny tiny bit of chip damage in. Now again, down comes the big expensive dragon. Now a big expensive dragon isn't going to help. Its skints are out of mana, and I can quite easily block this with some units. I again bring down my the Hedron Scouts, sacrifice those quickly along with Garruk's Beasts. I've got a ×5 Reiver Demon for a total of 6 mana there. Out that comes, makes short mincemeat of that Howling Golem, and then proceeds to punch the Shivan Dragon in the face. My beasts now, again, Garruk has replaced his beasts, those are charging across the battlefield. I start summoning down a load of extra AoE stuff just to block the damage from that Guardian coming through, because I know that Guardian is going to make short work of that Reiver Demon, what's left of it. But again, Garruk and his beasts are now in close proximity. I can summon lots of little AoE things in now, with those Hornets still drifting across for the extra bits of damage. At this point, you can see that my opponent is kind of beginning to like suffer quite heavily. The units that he or she can bring down just aren't quite cutting it. Down goes that Guardian with a beautiful bomb, if I do say so myself. I did try actually with the bomb. I've used that quite a bit recently instead of Giant Growth, and I am having a bit more fun with it nowadays. I'm still torn on which it's going to be. That ×3 Reiver Demon has already crossed the line, and it just looks at this point that there's not much really that my opponent can do. That said, I've got Garruk and a ×4 Reiver Demon running across the bottom. I'm also putting up a Hornet's Nest and the Spirit along the top, the Accursed Spirit, just to deal some damage. Down comes 6 Judge Zombies with the Hedron Scouts just to soak up some of that damage, and Hornets in there as well. You'll see that that top lane is just absolutely overwhelmed, but Garruk and the Reiver Demon finish off that back line Guardian just to take the victory. At this point in time, I've just overwhelmed my opponent with sheer brute force and then overwhelmed with numbers. This deck can do both, and that is the great thing about it. If you need a big heavy hitter, you can pull out a Reiver Demon or Garruk, or both. And if you need something in a big swarm, well, you've got your Drudge Skeletons, you've got your Clockwork Beetles, you've got your Hornet's Nests. It covers all your bases, and I'm just having so much fun obliterating people with this deck. It feels utterly brutal, and I love it so much. Anyway, folks, thank you ever so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this, again, please do let me know. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below on this deck, on my opponents, on what you think I could do to improve this deck, and what you like about it, what you don't like about it. What decks are you using in Magic Manastrike, and let me know what content you want to see in future. Otherwise, folks, thank you so much for watching, happy sailing, and see you in the arena.